let's start with you in the hardware block, Michal, because you've had the Zenfone 11 Ultra for a little while now. What you think?
That's right, Jason. I've had the Zenfone 11 Ultra for about a month now. So they announced this last Thursday, so we didn't get a chance to talk about it last week. But now that I've had it for a month, I can talk about it in full. And when they announced the Zenfone 11 Ultra last Thursday, it sparked quite a lot of discussion online about whether this is the end of small phones. There was even an article, there's even a video by Marquez Brownlee that went viral. It's about like small phones are dead, we killed them, or something like that. And it's when you look at the Zenfone 11, it's a bit true compared to the Zenfone 8, 9, and 10, which each boasted a smaller than 6-inch display. I think each were 5.9 inches. The Zenfone 11 Ultra has a massive 6.78-inch display. It's not only significantly larger, but also has the same overall design of the ROG Phone 8, minus the air trigger shoulder buttons or the USB-C port on the side. And actually, I'm going to switch my camera over now to...
Crossing fingers.
Yes,
It
there you
works.
go. And actually, before I show you the phone in full, let me just show you the layout quickly. Since it has the same overall layout as the ROG Phone 8, it also has this off-center USB port, C port on the bottom. You can see it's like on the left.
Mhm.
And this makes it a bit awkward to use with some car docks and many third-party telescopic gaming controllers. And yeah, I that's one aspect that I don't like, that it borrows from the ROG Phone 8. And just give you a bit of a perspective on how big this phone is. So here's on the left, I have the Zenfone 8, and on the right, the Zenfone 11 Ultra. Like,
That is
it's
massive.
it's significantly bigger, right?
It almost looks like
And
you're holding the Ultra closer to
right.
the
You
And
camera.
could
like this is the Zenfone 9. You can see the exact same size as the Zenfone 8, and then the Zenfone 10, exact same size as the Zenfone 8 and 7.
so you
Compared to
could
that, the Zenfone 11 Ultra is just way bigger,
you could
right? So this
fit
is
the
clearly a dramatic difference.
you could fit
Beast.
the Zenfone 10 completely inside the Zenfone 11 Ultra. Like it completely envelops it. That's how much bigger it is on all. Like it's wider and taller. That's crazy. So.
And before the reason I'm not going to show you like my actual Zenfone 11 Ultra without the case is because I did an oopsie and I dropped it and I cracked the back. So here's some photos of the phone before I did the oopsie.
Oh,
It's quite
remember
a beautiful
when?
phone. It's quite a
Oh,
beautiful phone, and I'm sad I can't show you the actual back. But here's
I
some
feel
photos
like we
that I
need some
took when it
heartwarming
still looked
music to play
beautiful.
over
I'm
this.
glad. I'm glad you got
We, the
photos of it
world's smallest.
before you broke it. That's great.
It was during this photo shoot that the incident happened, unfortunately. Okay, so back to
I'm
my
sorry.
window.
I've been there. I can only laugh
It
because I've been
happens.
there.
I know. I
Yes,
know.
it happens.
Okay, so yeah, I'm pretty used to the bigger phones. The large size hasn't really bothered me. But if you are coming from the Zenfone 8 or Zenfone 9 or Zenfone 10, you might find this bigger size challenging or off-putting to use. But it being bigger actually has some material benefits, as there's now room for a much larger 5500 milliamp hour battery versus the 4300 milliamp hour battery in the Zenfone 10. Battery life and charging for me have been pretty great, by the way. I've been averaging about 5 to 6 hours of screen on time each day. And because of the larger size, there's also room for a third camera. There's a 32 megapixel 3x optical zoom telephoto lens with OIS on board. And there's also a 50 megapixel IMX 890 sensor coupled with ASUS signature 6-axis hybrid gimbal OIS, plus a 13 megapixel 120-degree field of view ultra wide angle lens. And the Zenfone 10 also had a 50 megapixel main camera. I think it had a IMX 7 something, and it also had a 13 megapixel ultra wide angle. So what's new is the 3x telephoto. So my overall impression of the camera is that it's just fine. I think I'll save you the time of going back and forth between the windows, and I'll just share the Amazon Photos link and the Amazon Video link and just talk about the photos so you can look for yourself. My overall impression of the camera is just fine. Like, the photos and videos that it takes aren't bad or stellar, and that's fine for me. I've never noticed an issue with inaccurate colors or out of focus objects or people, although I do think the bokeh effect in the dedicated portrait mode looks noticeably fake in some of the photos that I took. The 3x telephoto looks pretty good, like the photos from it, except, it does offer like enhanced zoom up to 30x, which I think is kind of unusable. I think the standout feature of the Zenfone camera, and it's been good since the older devices, is the stabilization. Even with the default adaptive stabilization mode, it's amazing. Like you can see if I'm going to the camera, you see there's an adaptive stabilization mode and there's also a hyper steady mode. Both are amazing. Like it's look like you're walking around with a gimbal on your hand when you're walking around taking vlogging style videos with it. If I had any complaints, I'd say that, there's no consistent video recording resolutions. The low light video quality is not that great. Doesn't support Google's HDR, Ultra HDR format, and low light selfies, even though ASUS says they imply a noise reduction algorithm to them to make them look better, I still think they don't look all that great overall. However, I do think the phone generally takes great selfies in good lighting conditions, and the addition of the 0.8x wide angle mode, here you can see the webcam that I'm using, is a pretty great option to take group selfies. There are other AI camera features like AI portrait video, AI object sense, light trail mode, etc. I only tried out the AI portrait video, which applies a bokeh effect in real time to human and other pet subjects. I think it's a little gimmicky. It is kind of cool when it works, though. Moving on from the camera, there's also larger dual stereo speakers. You have a speaker at the bottom and I think speakers at the top grill. The screen to body ratio is like 95 or something, like some crazy like that. So there's barely enough room for actual big speakers, but it does work pretty well. And if you do care about that, there's also a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack at the bottom, which is nice. To be honest, like I don't really care about that anymore because it's been so long since phones dropped them.
Mhm.
But if you do care about that, it's nice to have. The display, though, it has a full HD resolution LTPO AMOLED display that goes up to 120 hertz in most apps and up to 144 hertz in most games. One thing that I don't like about the refresh rate is that in the default auto mode, for some reason, Zen UI, like, it loves to force the refresh rate down to 60 hertz in apps like Reddit or in apps like Telegram or in many apps that have like a web view that use that integrate a web browser. So it's kind of jarring to like use a lot of apps that I frequently use, which are social media apps that have like web views. They're scrolling at a stuttery 60 hertz, and then I open Chrome or some other app and like the settings of the launcher, and it's a buttery smooth 120 hertz. So typically, I just like to stick it to 120 hertz constant. I don't let the OS handle the refresh rate at all. And I hope, ASUS kind of looks at that and fixes that. Rounding out the specs, there's an aluminum frame, which I can't show you here, and an IP68 rating, 68.5 watt wired and 15 watt wireless charging, and Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 paired with up to 16 gigs of RAM and 512 gigabytes UFS 4.0 storage. As you'd expect with these specs, the Zenfone 11 Ultra has no trouble whatsoever handling whatever I throw at it, which, as I mentioned before, the amount of stuff you can do with a phone this powerful is kind of waning with the golden age of emulators winding down. But there are some stuff you can do. Like there are some on-device AI features that this phone packs that I guess, kind of do need this processing power. Like there's an AI transcription feature in the sound recorder app that I can show you quickly right here. It's basically, there we go. Let me show I had this recording. I just did this brief recording as a test, and it just transcribed this in real time. There's also a generate summary feature that runs on device AI, and it just summarizes it. It's like a quick 5-second clip. I doubt it can actually summarize this sort of thing. It also has, an AI call translator in the dialer app, AI noise cancellation VoIP apps like WhatsApp, and an AI semantic search feature. So the semantic search feature basically, like, you take photos of people, it can like recognize people, it can recognize objects like food, sky, vehicle, plant, etc., things like that. The AI transcription call translator features rely on language packs. There's also a on-device, this one I thought was kind of cool at first, an on-device AI wallpaper generator. So if you're familiar with the Pixel phones, you can generate wallpapers using the cloud. Well, this one's totally on-device using Stable Diffusion model that then is upscaled using a super resolution technique. I thought it would be useful at first and neat, but unfortunately, because it's all running on device, you're kind of limited in the quality of the images you can get. And also, you have to download a 3 gigabyte model to even make this work. So I'm not as sold on it anymore. But if you like having all your data run on device, then I guess it could be useful. Lastly, the Zenfone 11 Ultra, as you can see, runs Zen UI on top of Android 14 with, unfortunately, only 2 years of OS updates and 4 years of security updates promised. It does pack some nifty features like built-in integration with Microsoft's Link to Windows feature. If I could show you right here, Link to Windows. This is integrated built-in, which means that you can stream apps from your phone to your Windows PC, share your clipboard, or use it as an instant hotspot. There's also ASUS's Glide X software, which does much of the same thing, but with ASUS devices. There's also a new Video Genie feature that offers additional controls when using media apps. And for the first time in Zen UI, integrated support for Google's live captions feature and their personal safety apps. So I really do think that Zen UI overall is pretty neat for what it has. And I really like that you can customize it. It's basically like stock Android, but with a lot of useful enhancements and the ability to customize a lot of the default settings. But there are still some annoyances, like the fact that background app management is still enabled by default, which could be why, for me, Gmail notifications has just been hit or miss. Like I've not been getting them on time. So I've had to like disable manually a lot of the background app management settings. Now, just to talk about a bit about the price, sorry. It starts at $8.99 US. It's not on sale yet in the US, or 9.99 euros. It's kind of difficult to recommend this phone because, sure, it might be $100 cheaper than the Pixel 8 Pro or S24 Plus at their respective MSRPs, but both those devices frequently go on sale. They offer longer software support and they have more software bells and whistles. On the other hand, there's the OnePlus 12, which offers comparable specs and 2 more years of OS updates, plus an additional year of security updates at $100 less. I think ASUS had an incredibly compelling offering with last year's Zenfone 10, which had flagship tier specs and a compact form factor and a great starting price of $6.99 US. It's a shame that wasn't more popular, which may be why we have this hybrid Zenfone ROG phone in the form of the Zenfone 11 Ultra. Hopefully, they have a smaller Zenfone 11 model in the works. Otherwise, I think it's fair to say that the small phone experiment is only going to be kept alive by niche third-party OEMs and not big players like ASUS.
Cool.
All right.
All right.
And that's my review of the Zenfone 11 Ultra. I do think it's an overall solid device with a couple of AI bells and whistles. It's just a tough thing to sell considering the competition this year, from like it's really hard to beat 7 years of support and all the AI features when you don't have the kinds of capabilities and partnerships with Google that Samsung does, or the kinds of in-house AI software engineering that Google does.
It's a tough market right now for sure, but I mean they're in it for a reason. They're an established brand. There's got to be an audience that's loyal, right? We're 11 generations into the phone, right? So yeah, you're right. I mean, it is hard, if a new user comes in and trying to compare the 7 years of support or the other stuff, but they've got to have some level of they've got to compete somehow, right? And so the best way they can do it is by making a really pretty phone and throwing in whatever features they can. So I credit ASUS for putting together a compelling case with the phone for sure. So
yeah,
cool.
Yeah,
all right.
It's been a long time since I had like an ASUS phone experience. I'm talking years at this point, so
Yeah,
I was curious to kind of hear how they're doing nowadays. So
it's a big phone. That's a big phone.
It's a big phone.
chonker.
Chonker. I know, indeed.